sometimes it doesn't. So it's all right. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it all together. I thank you guys for being here. We're gonna see. We're gonna get a couple more people in, then we're gonna get this rolling. But before we do, what I want to do is introduce Trevor for you here. Trevor is. He's been around with me for literally ever, I want to say. Absolutely forever. And I want him to tell you a little bit about who he is before we get into the whole R6 and whatnot. So Trevor, let it go. Let's get the lowdown of who you are and what role you play and how we've been together for quite some time.
Yeah. So I'm Trevor Current. I'm a website designer and developer and graphic designer and a photographer. And I've been doing all this creative stuff for about 30 years now. So it's been a long time.
It's a little bit.
But Joe and I have been doing work together since like 2010. We connected actually through social media, through Twitter, and through a mutual friend who was running a podcast at the time. And then in 2011, we started our own podcast, the Digital Photography Cafe Show. And we had been doing that up until October of 2017, I think it was. Then you went off and started your YouTube channel, and I really was diving deep into the website development work and had been very, very busy there. My company got extremely busy, and unfortunately, I just did not have the time to continue with the Digital Photography Cafe Show. But things have kind of settled out now a little bit more, and we're looking to start doing some more creative work together. So this will be great.
Yep, we might branch off into another vlog, another podcast also. So we'll see what ends up happening. Like Trevor said, we were doing it for, God, what was it, 7-8 years or something, traveling the country, covering all of the photography events from WPPI on the other coast to Photo Plus Expo in New York City and Manhattan for many years. We had a booth at Photo Plus Expo back, God, it's about now, 4 or 5 years ago. And every year we had a booth and we'd bring people in, all of the movers and shakers, as well as, of course, all the representatives from the major manufacturers. So, and we would interview them. That's what we did. So we might start doing some of this again. We'll see what ends up happening. But like Trevor said, I kind of migrated over here to JCristina's, my site, with my channel with all the stuff that I normally do that you come to see. So maybe we'll start doing something together. But anyways, before I start rattling on and on like I do sometimes, I want to say that I want to make this live nice and short. Probably 30 to 40, 45 minutes the most. Because the last time we did like a 2.5 hour, we start talking and we'll talk forever. And we don't want that to happen this time. So we'll kind of make sure that it's shorter, because a lot of people are tuning in from not only here in the US, but overseas. And, there's a limited amount of time. So you guys want to hear what we think about this R6, and that's what we're going to tell you right now. Now, the reason I brought Trevor in today is because he was thinking about getting a new camera, all right? And he was looking at the R5, the R6, and the R6 was a little bit, let's say, cheaper, more affordable. For what he does, it's probably going to be better. Now, we went over the specs in the last vlog that I did. And if anyone is new and you haven't seen or heard any of those specs, some of the major, I guess, standout specs is that it's going to have 20 megapixel sensor in it. A lot of people said, why is it only 20 megapixels? But what I've told a lot of people is that 20 megapixels today is not 20 megapixel of yesterday. You're going to have your dynamic range. Your DR is going to be a lot better now. There's going to be a lot. It's just different. It's absolutely different than 20 megapixels from 5 years ago. So also it's going to have in-body image stabilization, which is really important. It's going to shoot 12 frames per second mechanical, 20 frames per second electronic. So if you want to shoot silent, let's say, you can, all the way up to 20 frames per second. Also, it will be doing this oversampling 5K. So it will shoot 4K video. That's one of the things that I was interested in. I like the idea of being able to shoot 4K and being able to take 4K and actually do 60p with it in comparison to only 30p was really unbelievable, because we know that Canon usually will just disable stuff, right? They neuter their cameras all the time. And seeing that 60p will be in there, I was really shocked. Also, with full HD, it's going to be 120 frames per second, which is nice for slow-mo, so that's great. There's a lot of really good things. Also, 2 card slots. Now, I know, Trevor, if you're going to be going out there doing a shoot of some kind, most professionals and pro-ams, they want dual card slots. Why? Because you want redundancy. You can't just start taking pictures or doing video and then all of a sudden just losing everything because a card went dead or something. So dual card slots was really, really important. So all in all, this camera looks absolutely amazing. Now, it is the, let's say, we looked at it more as like a 6D. They called it an R6. I view it as a 6D, all right, but on a mirrorless side. Whereas the R5 would be like the equivalent to, like, let's say, a mirrorless 5D. So it's right in that, let's say, difference in price, but also in spec. So it's going to be, I believe, it will be a pro-am and not an amateur, like what you currently have, the camera that you're probably going to be migrating from, right, Trevor? Is
Right.
the, what is it, a TI, that T2i, T3i, or something like that?
Yeah. I had bought so this was kind of interesting. Years ago, back when the 7D came out, they also brought out the Rebel T2i at the same time.
Right.
And comparing, the photo quality and even the video quality that was coming out of the 7D, comparing it to the Rebel, they were kind of on par. They were both ASP sensors. And, I looked at it and said, well, for what my needs are for doing product photography in the studio, just for some fun shooting and stuff, the Rebel is probably a great solution, and it's a fraction of the price. It's like half the price. And I've been very pleased with that camera. But obviously, that was many years ago. Technology has changed. And now looking to get into doing more video work, I'm doing the video work more as a content creator approach, as opposed to a professional videographer shooting weddings, shooting commercials, shooting ad spots, things like that. That I'm not going to do.
Right.
My need is for content creation. So I'm looking at the difference between the R5 and the R6. I mean, the R5 sounds absolutely amazing, but it's projected to be significantly more expensive than the R6. And I think
Right.
the R6, for my needs, will be fantastic.
Yeah, that's a perfect statement there, guys. He said projected, and that's exactly right. So everything we're talking about obviously are rumors, but it's so close to release time. These rumors are pretty solid. So something interesting happened as of today, or a few minutes ago. The release date for the R5 and the R6 was supposed to be July 9th. Well, what happened was Sony, as of a few minutes ago, decided to postpone their release of their A7S3, the next version out there, because they said, well, instead of us releasing right at the same time that Canon does, which was originally they said that they were going to release in the mid, let's say July 15th or something. Instead of doing that, we want to postpone it all the way back to July, like 30th, let's say, or at the very end of of July. And that just to be able to stand out, let's say. So they want to be able to make sure that people see the difference between that R6 and the R5 and their A7S3. So supposedly that A7S3 is going to be an amazing new camera from Sony. So
Right.
I can see that why they're doing it, but I know there's a lot of Sony fans out there that are not happy with this whole thing because it's been delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. So as far as the R6 and the R5, like you said, Trevor, the R5 is like that big daddy, to it. Like I said, either a 5D or a 6D. There is a difference. The build quality is going to be different. Most likely, not only the build quality, but it'll probably be weather sealing a little bit different.
Right.
These type of things. There's going to be minor things. Also, 8K. 8K, guys, in the R5. It reminds me of the 5D. The 5D Mark II, when it came out, was revolutionary, right? Everyone was like,
Yeah.
wow, we can actually record HD video with our DSLR. This is craziness. And there was some TV shows on TV that were actually using the Canon 5D Mark II at the time because it was so just unbelievable. Unbelievable. They would have a kit that cost them like 5-6 grand compared to
Yeah.
60-100 grand, right? And they came up with some amazing video with it. So I feel like that's what Canon is trying to do here, guys, with the new R6 and the R5. They're trying to make that new revolution, especially with the R5 being 8K 30 frames per second. That's unbelievable. I mean, there's nothing else
Yeah.
doing it. So the question that I have is, will Sony throw 8K into their camera? Whereas in all rumors, it does not say that. We see 4K. Some rumors say 60p, some rumors say 120p at 4K, but that's it. So I'll be interested. You know, I think that's a really big, big thing that's going to be happening. Right now, we're kind of at that cusp where we have Sony and Canon going head to head. Where years ago, and you know, Trevor, it used to always be Canon and Nikon going head to head. So I don't know what ends up happening here, but that was, I had to put that out there because I'm sure some of you guys wanted to know that. So that is going to be, let's say, set back to the end of July. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. Hopefully they don't postpone it anymore.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you know, these companies always need to keep on top of what the other is doing. And, you know, they all have pretty good ideas of what's going on internal. You know, there's, you know, I mean, they don't like it, but there's leaks that get out there and kind of float within the industry. It may not make it out publicly on the blogs and stuff, but they definitely have an idea of what's going on. So, yeah, I mean, a kind of a wait and see is not a bad idea, but if they wait and see too long, they're going to be way behind. And you know, in the announcement and the launch of this new camera, if they're trying to do, you know, be competitive with it. So
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You know, for me, I look at it as the R5 is going to be one of those cameras that I would look at as a studio owner, right? Picking up 1, 2, or 3 of them to be able to go and shoot with. Whereas someone like you that are not going to be using it all the time and really squeezing it for every bit, I think it might be overkill. And it goes back to the price. You know, the rumored price of the R5 is like $4,500 or so, let's
yeah,
call it.
I'm not
And
spending $400-500 on a camera for what I'm doing.
exactly. So whereas the R6 is going to be right around $2,500. And a lot of you said, and also you, Trevor, too, that even $2,500 is a lot for what you're doing. And you might need to wait for the next iteration of something cheaper, but along these same lines. So I don't know exactly what ends up happening. Maybe they end up lowering that price a little bit and that 2,500 isn't really the price. But I foresee also an R1, let's call it, which would be the equivalent to the 1D, right? The massive that I
Real
use
high
for
end.
exactly for really high end that will start at like $6,500 or something, or maybe even more. So I think they're starting to get all of their ducks in a row and making cameras that are, let's say, the same or a duplicate of their DSLRs. So people can go either with a DSLR or they can go with a mirrorless. And once they get the mirrorless just dead on the way they want it, they can start phasing out DSLRs. And there was a long time that people said, hey, they're going to be getting rid of DSLRs, you know, a year or two, mirrorless is out, blah, blah, blah. And the bottom line is, even when Sony came out with their first A7 that Trevor and myself were over there at or no, it wasn't WPPI. We were in
Yeah,
PPE in Manhattan, and we
yeah,
saw that very first A7, and we're like, wow, this is really cool. But Sony had no lenses. Sony is like, oh yeah, here, try this camera. And they had like, you know, a I think it was a Canon lens that was attached to it. So they didn't even have any lens, but we knew it, right? When we interviewed them, when we saw them, we saw the camera, we said, this is a revolution. This is the future. And that's what ended up happening with the A7. The A7, the very first one it was just I hate to say junk, but it was just junk. I mean, it didn't focus at all. I mean, focusing was just a hot mess. The thing was just
Right.
not great. But they had an idea, and they literally, when they came out, I think, and I've said this before, when they came out with the A7 III, that affordable $2,000 full frame mirrorless camera, they moved a lot of Nikon clients and a lot of Canon clients into the Sony platform. It was the smartest
Yeah.
thing that Sony could do. So, anyways, as far as the R6 goes, guys, I really do think that it is an unbelievable camera according to the specs. Obviously, we don't see it as of yet. We don't know everything is exact, but usually Canon will just neuter, all right, their cameras. And by the looks of it, they're not doing that this time. And I don't even know what to make of it. I don't know, Trevor. I really
I
don't
know.
know.
I know. When I watched your videos announcing the R5, and I was like, holy crap, their Canon's not holding back here. It sounds like they're really, putting all of their R&D into this camera and really going to make a big play for it.
Right.
And when I heard that, I was pleasantly surprised, and I'm like, wow, this is like the next 5D Mark II type of iteration here. But again, I think for the professional photographer, somebody that's actually shooting stills and you want the best quality and you do some high-end video work too, I think the R5 is probably going to be the better bet for you if you can afford it. For content creators, for pro-ams that are looking for a good still camera, but something also to do some great quality video work with, I think the R6 is going to be a great option, mainly because of its price point. I mean, I could buy two cameras for the price of one almost,
Right.
and have, a primary and a secondary, A roll and B roll, but the camera specs, I mean, look solid. And, we know that with YouTube content creation, all right, if you are a creator and you can record and upload in 4K to YouTube, YouTube factors that into their algorithm. And
Absolutely.
they'll actually bump you up a little bit more because you're offering 4K quality.
Right.
And 4K kind of future proofs a little bit when it comes to YouTube. It allow as bandwidth increases, as TV resolutions increase. Obviously, computer monitors are there already, but being able to stream down 4K video and giving people really like the best experience possible, YouTube loves that. So they're
Right.
definitely going to give you a bump for that. So for me, I'm looking at it saying, well, if I can shoot and edit in 4K, create an amazing image, get that uploaded. I have the bandwidth to do it at my office. So, that for me is really good. I don't need 8K. I think my computer would crap itself if I tried to do
Yeah, it won't be
8K.
able to handle it.
No,
Yeah,
I mean, I
see,
don't even know if it'll do 4K, to be honest with you. But
I know, I know. That is true though about YouTube. YouTube does like to see better and better and better quality, and if you
yeah,
upload better quality, they will definitely give you that little bit extra little bump. That if you're doing today, if you're sending YouTube 720p, for example, you know 720p is okay. Like if you're a gamer and you're just putting out there, constant videos, either on Twitch or whatever, and you want to do 720, that's fine. But we know that YouTube really wants 1080p now, as far as
yeah,
a minimum goes. And seeing that now 4K is like all the rage, right? They now look at 4K as being that thing that you must have, and they just give you that slight bump. I see Jose says here, and as an amateur photographer, he thinks that he's just going to wait it out because he can understand that us would possibly benefit from some of these cameras, whereas for him,
sure,
just like you, maybe they might be overkill, and that's possibly the
yes,
case. They might be a little bit too much. $2,500 for the R6 is not cheap for a body. Now we don't know if it's like a body, if that's going to be a kit. or how they're going to do it. Is 2500 going to be the kit, and then maybe 21 will be without? I don't know as of right now. So we will find out. But still, it's not cheap. It is absolutely not cheap. But if people are looking to get into mirrorless, I think it's going to be a major seller. I think as of right now, the R6 is probably going to be one of the bigger sellers that Canon has when it comes to their full frame mirrorless because of the price point. Okay, that is a really, really nice price point. It's really getting close to that. You know, like I said, what is going to happen with the A7S III, and how is that going to be priced, and how is it going to compare? Let's say, and how will it compare, obviously, to the R5, more likely, because we know that Sony, they do their A7S line, which is a little bit of a faster camera that shoots a sensor that is smaller, okay, whereas their R line has the larger sensor. So we can see the difference here too. We see the R6 as being the smaller sensor with 20 megapixels, whereas the R5 has 45 megapixels, guys.
Yeah,
45 megapixels. I can't even understand how that is. I don't know how this thing is going to capture 8K, 30 frames per second, with a 45 megapixel sensor. I can see it with like a 24, 26, 30 megapixel sensor, but 45, I don't know. I don't know. It's a lot. It is a lot. So that's going to be something that I'm really going to look at and say, is this going to really happen or is this not? So, we'll see what ends up happening with it.
Yeah. Daryl is posted a comment here. He said, I guess the obvious question is if either one of these are any benefit if you absolutely have no interest in shooting video. I still use DSLR because I strictly shoot photography, shoot stills. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the DSLR. And if it's working for you, there's no reason to upgrade. The need for the upgrade is if it's time. If you have an old body, if it's no longer doing the work for you and you need to get a new camera, well, then you have to start thinking about your options. DSLR technology, nothing wrong with it. It works fine. As far as future proofing, it's going to work just as well now and probably 10 years from now. But do you need those capabilities of specifically these mirrorless cameras? Not everybody will. Definitely not.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 110%. I've said this, all the time on this channel. I'll say it again. Upgrading your body it's great. Okay, it's really, it's fun to do. You have something new, and sometimes you get a little bit more creative because now you got something new to go and play with or whatnot. But camera bodies are like toilet paper. You throw them away all the time, and that is the problem. They have no longevity to them. Okay, it's something that you buy and it's depreciating, with every breath. That's just the way it is. And it's just constantly getting less and less. You pay $3,000 for a camera. In a year, it's worth less than $1,000. And that's just the way it is. So if you do not need a feature in a new body that you're looking at, if there's not a feature in there that's either going to save you time, save you money, give you, like less aggravation, something that a client requires. Perfect example, if you have a client that requires 8K, 30p, well, picking up, an R5 or a few R5s might not be a bad thing. If you have a client that requires 4K, all right, at 60p, well, then, if you have a body that doesn't do 4K at 60 frames, only does 30, well, now you're having to pick up a body because it's doing something that a client wants. So you get one or two clients and now you pay for your kit, and that's fine. But a lot of times people will look at these, the shiny new diamond, the little shiny new product, whatever it is, and they go and make these purchases. And the problem with that is these purchases are just sometimes just a waste of money. There's no reason to do it because you're not getting anything out of it. Right now, I'm shooting this video. Instead of with my webcam, I am now using Canon's 80D with their new Canon web utility. I'm testing it out. Hopefully it looks pretty good. But I'm actually doing this not with the webcam anymore. We're doing it with the 80D. So I was thinking about picking up a 90D to do this. But the only benefit that I'll get is 4K. Now for me, that might be enough, but I haven't done it yet because I want to see what they do with this mirrorless line. What do they do with that R6? Because if the R6 is going to be, let's say 2500, well, we're getting close to that 90D level. Not quite, obviously, but we're getting close. And,
Right.
you know, within $1,000, it might be worth picking up this new machine. So once again, it just depends on what you need it for. That's very, very important.
I mean, honestly, for those that are doing content creation like myself, I mean, you could get away shooting with your cell phone. I mean, honestly, that's really good enough. But if you want to elevate your product to the next level, or if you want to be doing content creation for clients, that's a different story. And when I talk about content creation, I'm talking about YouTube videos. I'm talking about videos that are being used on people's websites, things that people may want to go full screen with on a monitor or a TV. If you're just doing some postage stamp video on a website, it's really, I mean, you can pretty much do that with anything. But you know, then you take into account your contrast, your saturation of colors, the sharpness of the image, and everything. I mean, if you reduce it down small enough or you compress it enough, video out of a fantastic camera is still going to look like garbage. But if you start with a lower quality camera and then still compress it down, it's going to look even worse. So you really have to kind of weigh out what your needs are. And, you know, and for me, I mean, honestly, right now, shooting with my iPhone would probably be good enough. But, you know, like I said, I want to be able to take it to the next level, you know, be able to offer that out to other creators, you know, to people who are doing content creation. And I think having a higher level of equipment is more appropriate to the work I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, Flying High or Low says, you know, I bought a mirrorless camera 2 years ago, and he was saying how he's getting just many, many more, much more keepers, let's say, shooting with an 85 1.4. You know, 1.4, you have that just a razor tiny little bit of a focal plane, just a little hairline of focus. So seeing that he's getting a lot more out of that mirrorless camera in comparison to a DSLR, I mean, that means a lot, especially if you're shooting something like that. If you're shooting like a 1.2, you know, or something where you need to get the focus dead on, that AF has to be just absolutely perfect. That's one of the reasons why I developed, like about 8 years ago, the focus pyramid. Why did I make it? Well, because DSLRs are notorious for not having perfect autofocus. So you would
Right.
focus on someone, like I was shooting a lot of models and boudoir and all this stuff, and you would focus on like the model's eyelashes, and then you go look in the camera, on the back of the camera, you're like, wow, her eyelashes are slightly blurry, but the back of her ear is clear. Or the tip of her nose is clear, but her eyelashes are blurry. Hence, you have that front focus or back focus issue. So what happened is Canon, Nikon, everyone else that sells DSLRs allow you to do this micro fine tuning, this adjustment of your AF. So now we can actually literally adjust every single lens using the focus pyramid, right? Adjust every single lens. So when you snap on a 50, let's say, it says, hey, you need to do +8 focus, right? Or if you snap on your 70 to 200, it says, hey, you need to do -8 focus on the short side and maybe +10 on the long, whatever it is, you dial it in. So now your autofocus is right every single time. Whereas some people don't know this, with a mirrorless camera, you don't have to do that. Focusing works completely different. So with a DSLR, you really need to set that autofocus, that if you don't calibrate your autofocus, you're not going to get great images. So many people will buy $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 cameras and lenses and then put them together, and now their images are blurry because they haven't calibrated their autofocus. So very, very important. But like I said, you don't need to do that with a mirrorless camera, which is great. And that's why Flying High or Low is getting much more quality, let's say, images, or more, let's say, focused images than before, more keepers, let's call it, and it makes sense.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well,
So let me just
I'm very curious as to see, what the final announcement is going to be, what we're looking at with this, also what Sony's going to come out with. I have a Canon camera myself, but I have no like loyalty to Canon brand. I'm not invested enough in lenses and stuff to really worry about that.
right.
So for me to switch over to a Sony even is no big deal.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, for me, I've been kind of agnostic. So I've been a Canon shooter forever, but I shoot everything. It doesn't matter what it is. And if I'm doing something that I need high-end, let's say magazine work, I'll shoot like a Hasselblad. Or even now lately, we shoot like a Fuji medium format because we need medium format because we need all those extra pixels because in
Right.
post-production there's a lot more pushing and pulling that needs to be done. A lot of times we only have the actor, actress, or the model for a set period of time, and they might use an image that might be bust up, and then later on they need to take it into a really tight face shot, right? Really, maybe even to an eye shot, right? For eyeshadow or whatever it is. And so instead of having multiple shots, you can take the one and then really be able to pull it in tight with all those extra megapixels. Hence, the
Yeah.
medium format is just simply the way to go. It's always, the right tool for the job. And that's where, like I said, it's very important to say, well, is the R5 good for me? I think the R5 would be good for me just for the sole reason that number one, it kind of future proofs things a little bit with 8K. All right. Am I going to be shooting 8K tomorrow? No. But having it at 30 frames per second, at least it's there. Also,
Yeah.
I think that the side of it, whereas it is the equivalent to me, a 5D, I think is fantastic because now, once again, you're getting like the latest and greatest, something unbelievably, once again, good for 2, 3 years, 4 years down the road. But when it comes for me to, let's say, change out the 1D that I shoot, maybe Canon will have that R1 that comes out down the road. So am I going to go and buy, 2, 3, 4, R5s? No, but yeah, I might pick up one or two. That's a possibility. But for you, Trevor, I really think the R6 probably makes more sense because you're literally getting everything that you need. And if you want to start
Yeah.
doing more video, having the ability to do 1080p, that's going to look amazing. Also that autofocus is going to be bang on because according
Oh
to all
yeah.
the rumors, guys, they are
Yep.
not going to neuter the camera either. The R6 or the R5, they're not going to neuter the AF. Whereas in the past, we know that Canon just loves to neuter their cameras and take out things that are important. Like if
Yeah.
you're shooting 4K, they'll just shut down autofocus, and now all of a sudden you're like, what just happened?
Yeah.
You don't have dual pixel AF anymore, and you're like, well, now what do we have? So it just doesn't make sense. But they've done that in the past, and according to what we're seeing, they're not doing it. And this is what's just so
Yeah.
unbelievable to me. I don't get it. Being a Canon shooter forever, when I see this, I'm like, I'm waiting for the shoe to drop, guys. I'm waiting for the shoe to
Yeah,
drop.
well, me too. That's why I'm saying it's a wait and see right now. Yeah, no, I agree. I just want to step back for a second about resolution because I see on the websites and in chats and on forums and stuff, and everybody's always talking about resolution. How big is the sensor? How many megapixels? And they're for years and years they're doing. The manufacturers are doing the megapixel wars. But I want to give you a frame of reference from my point of view. So the first 20 years of my career, I spent doing graphic design. Okay, so a lot of consumer packaging, a lot of collateral work, excuse me, a lot of point of purchase displays for stores, and a lot of posters and things like that, like window displays. So I, as an art director, when I get an image in, I want to be able to use that image for everything. Whether it be,
Right.
an image, let's say, of a cookie, because I did a lot of food packaging. So I would need this image of a cookie to be used on a box that sits on a store shelf. I need it to be used on a point of purchase display. So a header that could be like, 2 feet wide by 2 feet tall that sits at the end of an aisle or by a checkout register. And I need to be able to use this cookie on a big poster that sits in a window. So
Exactly.
for me, a 40 plus megapixel sensor that I'm going to be able to get in tight on a product, shoot it massive size, retouch it, silhouette it, photo compose it at this huge size gives me a ton of flexibility.
Right.
So it comes back to, what your needs are.
Yeah.
If you're doing commercial work for ad agencies and graphic studios where they're buying your photography for that particular type of usage, then yeah, having more resolution is very important.
Yeah.
But if you're kind of just doing portrait work, where you're selling prints or the final images on thumb drive or whatever, download to your client, you may not need as high a resolution for that type of work.
Right.
But like Joe said, for the fashion stuff, absolutely. They want to be able to zoom in on a full body shot that just happens to have the model in the perfect head position with the hair
Right.
flowing just the perfect way and be
Right.
able to zoom in, crop in tight and use that headshot on the cover of a magazine.
Yeah,
So the
so I'll give you guys a perfect example. Then I want to answer a question from Andrew Crisp. So an absolute perfect example of this happened. I think it was like a year or two ago. I did a fashion shoot, the Scott, I believe it was at the time. I believe it was a Scada. Anyways, did a fashion shoot over at Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago is where Trump always is, right? So I live like 20 minutes from Trump's place over there. Anyways, so I was shooting the fashion show, and the girls are coming down the line, and there's, let's say, 30 of them. And we're doing full bodies. Now, this is medium format. We're doing full bodies. And then later, like Trevor said, we would then take those images and have a full body shot, a bust up shot, and then a headshot. Why? Because it had to do with what they were wearing. Maybe it was the shoes, maybe it was the outfit, maybe it was a purse, maybe it was makeup, whatever it is, they can now repurpose those images. And instead of having, you can't take 15 images during a fashion show, let's just say. It's very difficult unless you have multiple photographers doing it. One that's shooting extremely tight, someone's in the middle, and then someone's wide. But for the most part, it doesn't work like that. So having something that just has a ton of megapixels later on in post-production gives the company the latitude to be able to do whatever they want and sell the things that they need and still be able to zoom in there and get a really, really crisp shot out of it, which is very important. Right. Now, Andrew Crisp says, do you think that there'll be a 5D Mark V? Now, I do believe that there will be. Now, a lot of people would probably say, no, you're crazy. I just feel that I think that DSLRs are just not dead yet. A lot of people want them to be dead, and I know that it's going to get there. I just don't think that we're there as of yet. I just really don't. I think that there's going to be a few more iterations. Maybe the 5 will be it, and there won't be a 6. I don't know. But I do think that we'll see a 5D Mark V. We know that there's a lot of people out there that still absolutely love their DSLRs. They like an OVF compared to an EVF, all right? And that is a major thing for people to get past. I've gotten more used to the EVFs. I've always liked an OVF. The difference is you look through an OVF, what you see, all right, is what it is. That is it. When you look through an EVF, you're actually seeing an augmented reality of the shot. So you're actually seeing what you are composing, but then also all of the additives to it. So if you have, let's say, some type of LUT put in there or some kind of changes when it comes to whatever, when you look through that EVF, you're going to get that. Whereas with a DSLR and an OVF, What you see is just what's there and that's it. In post-production, you make your changes. So there's a lot of cool things, especially for product photography. It's kind of nice to be able to get things right in the camera. It's a little bit easier with an EVF. I wouldn't
Yeah.
call it cheating, but it is definitely a lot easier. But so once again, I don't think that they're dead as of yet. I think DSLRs are going to be around for a few more iterations, but they're just going to slow down. I think they're going to back off. There's not going to be as many coming out. Remember also, guys, you have EF lenses galore. Millions probably on the planet, okay? They're moving everyone into RF. Yes, you can use an adapter. That's fine. But a lot of people don't like to use adapters because even
Right.
though they're great and they work out nice, but adapting is still adapting. You want to just get the lenses that you want. So, a lot of the people that are coming from DSLRs are going to have to go into RF lenses, and we know they're expensive, just like an EF lens. And some of them are actually better, which is amazing right there in its face, right?
Yeah. Well, that's it. All the manufacturers are going to have to support their base. The amount of professional photographers still using DSLRs, the amount of hobbyists and pro-ams using DSLRs is still pretty big. And there, like you said, there's a lot of glass out there that need to continue to be supported. And they're going to need to continue selling DSLRs to support that base until the mirrorless base builds enough and there's enough adaptation into the professional space where they can then wean back on the DSLRs. They can cut back on their R&D and their production, their development in there, because then they can afford to lose that business, let's say, because they've got enough business coming in the other direction. But until then, they're going to have to support both.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. They don't have a choice. They really, really don't have a choice. And, the Olympics was going to be a big thing. 2020, and ended up being obviously pushed back because of Corona, the whole thing with the virus. And that being said, there was like a setback that happened, not just in production, but in, let's call it not R&D either, but just a setback in general. There was going to be a major push when it comes to the equipment for 2020, because every time an Olympic year happens, the photographers are either with the Nikon or with the Canon, now Sony. And it's always something that people that are, let's say, not in the know, they will watch that and they'll be like, oh, look at that sea of white lenses, or, oh, look at that sea of black lenses, or whatever. And they really sometimes think about what they're going to buy based on what the pros are using instead of based on what they need, which is kind of stupid, but that's what happens, right, guys? That is what happens. Let me see here. Let's see. Muriel says that he's a little bit nervous about using the EVF over OVF. He's doing underwater photography. Need an update to the 7D. Yeah, that would be kind of nice to see. But yeah, there's a lot of people that have been using OVF for many, many years. And the thing is they are just not, let's say, comfortable at using the EVF. I personally, it took a while. And the problem with the EVF to the OVF is when the EVFs first came out, the issue was they didn't look good. They were really grainy. The update was just horrendous. Okay, there was sometimes blackout that happened. It just wasn't good. It simply wasn't good. But now the EVFs are just getting better and better and better. And you don't have that lag that you had before. You have less lag or almost no lag, which is really, that's what people are looking for. You don't want to know that you're looking at an EVF, but it's getting there, all right? It's processing power. That's what it all comes down to. And the more processing power that the camera uses, the hotter the camera gets. And the bane to all cameras, doesn't matter if it's mirrorless or DSLRs, the bane is heat. And trying to figure out how to disperse the heat is a major issue. And that's one of the reasons I said, I do not know how 8K 30 frames per second or 4K 120 frames per second is going to happen with that R5. I don't know. The thing that I don't get is the heat. How are they going to distribute the heat? Are they going to put a fan in it like they do with the C series? Now, if any of you guys have been with me for quite some time, you know when it comes to high-end video, I'm shooting on a C series camera, C100, 200, 300, whatever, 500. The C series are just amazing cameras. Why? Because they are built for video. Why? Because they do it fantastic, number one. There's never a time that they go down, number two. And then also they have a mega fan in it that's blowing on the sensor, and you can literally just shoot them video all day long and just keep on swapping out cards. So they're purpose built. So how is Canon going to do it with the R5? I really don't know. How are they going to duct this heat out? I don't know.
Well, and that, another testament for wanting to wait a little bit before purchasing it when it becomes available until there's enough real world usage out there to see how it performs. And the same with the R6. Regardless of what equipment you're using, you want, before you jump in and buy it, you want to see how it's performing. You don't be the guinea pig. Let other people do it. Let other people test it. And if there are problems that can be fixed through firmware, maybe it's a matter of, whatever, they need to dial back the processor or whatever to save the heat, to make it function proper. They can do that through firmware. But if it's a hardware issue, then you just simply don't want that piece of equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. Sandeep says, do you have any idea what the estimated price is on the R6? I think he just jumped in here with us. Welcome. So they're saying the speculation is 2,500. So we don't know if that's body only, if that's going to be a kit that comes with like a cheaper kit lens. We really don't know. But let's just call it, $24.99, and we'll see. But it's still pricey. It's still pricey. And like we were talking about, if you missed it, but we were talking about how the R5 is going to be closer to like that $4,500 range, about $2,000 more. So,
Yep.
We'll see. And like I was saying also, I look at the R6 as the equivalent to a 6D, whereas the R5, I look at it more as a 5D, okay, on the DSLR to mirrorless, comparison.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Rick said, for those of us who shot video back in the 80s, worked with black and white EVFs and light trails on the subjects. And yeah, I know. I had a monstrous VHS camcorder that you would sit on your shoulder. The big thing come out in front of your eyeball. You're walking around like Popeye with one eye squinted the entire time. And
You're getting old, Trevor. Getting old.
God, I think that's part of the problem with my eyes. But, yeah, no, I mean, the technology has changed. I mean, what's important for me is the Flippy screen on the back, right? I mean, this is all of the bodies
Big.
Now are coming with the rear articulating screens. And that would be something I would want for content creation because of my vision, I get older, the eyes don't work as well, and
Yeah.
And I mean, I have to put on different glasses when I do video work because of the lens coating.
Yeah.
That's all. These are progressive lenses, and they suck for reading because I'm trying to look at the bottom of my glasses and straight ahead into the camera through the top, and everything's blurry up here.
No, absolutely.
So,
that Flippy screen has been, a major issue when it comes to all camera manufacturers. Even with Canon, the Canon's #1, the hottest selling mirrorless camera in the world. A lot of you guys don't know it, but if you watch the channel, you do, is Canon's KISS, right? Their M series camera, their M50 or whatever. Depends on what part of the world you reside. Either which way, that camera is unbelievably amazing. It is mirrorless, it's APS-C, right? But it's the Flippy thing. It's the Flippy. And when some of these manufacturers, take the screen and flip it up, and now it's in the way of a microphone or in the way of a light or in the way of something, it doesn't work. If it flips down, now all of a sudden it's in the way of the tripod. It shouldn't be there. So the fully articulated back panel that fully articulates to the side and then forward to you has just been what all content creators have been asking for. For so many years, I wish I can bring this down. I have one here. Anyway, so many years we've been using these small, like I have an Annie Cine here, 4K. little 8-inch monitor. So I would be able to monitor different cameras here. Well, now we don't have to do it anymore, right? We don't
Right.
have to do it. Back in the day with like the 7Ds and whatnot, before you had that flip, you couldn't do it. So
Yep.
I think all camera manufacturers are going to have a fully articulated back panel. That's just simply it. The problem is, guys, a lot of people, they say, Joe, hey, you don't need a fully articulated back panel. Matter of fact, I don't want one because I don't use it and it will get in the way. And the thing is that, yes, my answer to that is always, today we are no longer photographers. Today we're hybrid shooters. So we
Yeah.
do both photo and we do video. If you have a studio like I do, many times clients are going to want photo. Sometimes they're going to need magazine work. Sometimes they're going to want video also to accompany it. Sometimes I just do 15-second, 30-second, and 16-second ad spots. Why? Because I've done video forever. So today where we're seeing that there is a big, let's say, difficult to get work for a lot of full-time photographers. The photographers are having to become hybrid shooters where they do multiple things. And shooting video is very important because people want it. That's why a lot of people went from video, photo, and now they're doing drone work. Right? So, it's like whatever is the thing you need to be able to do. So the manufacturers understand this. They understand that the professionals want video also. So they know that we rate their cameras based on their video as much as their photo. Is it right? Probably not, but kind of, yeah, because everything is hybrid today.
Right. Right. Agreed. And you know what? I mean, we always, I know in the past, we've talked about opportunities for photographers for work, and that, the traditional stuff that everybody's been used to, shooting portraits and events and whatever has kind of been put on hold. Where there is a market, and it's not as easy to find, but it's doing work for creators, people who are selling online courses, people who are selling digital products. They're all looking for video. And a lot of these content creators, they are thinking about building the scripts, the content, the text, the learning resources. They're not thinking about the technology of, creating the video and the audio and editing and making a great looking presentation, a great looking ad spot to sell their course. So that really is another opportunity. There's a lot of big players out there in the creative space selling courses and such. And, they make their money selling courses. They don't make their money in messing with technology. So that is an opportunity for you as well. I mean, if you can find someone who is one of these types of creators and, present them with your service offerings, you never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. John says, he loves obviously photography, but he actually likes that flippy screen to be able to hit those like weird angles or do hip shots or whatever. And that is 100%, the case. Many times we'll do shots whereas it's on a gimbal or something, and to be able to just flip that screen down to you, be able to hold your camera. Let's say you're doing a wedding and you want to come above with like a boom or something and be able to shoot that wide shot from over them. Let's say it's like their first look, or maybe the dance, like on the whatever it is, to be able to have that boom and be able to see what's going on. That is fantastic. I mean, that is great to be able to do it, or to be able to come down low, let's say, and be able to still see with that camera on a boom or on some type of stick. So yeah, there's a lot of use when it comes to these fully articulating back panels. And I think that a lot of the manufacturers are just going to have to get with the program and move into that, and just they're all going to have them eventually, and that's just simply the way it is. That's just there's no two ways about it.
Yeah, and the technology's there, the design is there. I mean, they all kind of borrow from each other anyway. I mean, creating the inside so it flips out to the side. I mean, it's not, rocket science here. They could certainly all do it if they wanted to. And those that argue that they don't like the flippy screen because it gets in the way or whatever. I mean, it's only in the way if you use it. I mean, if it's flipped around the back and tucked in, it's not in the way. So, having it available on a camera body, I think is an asset, not a detriment.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. So let's take a few more questions and then we're going to get out of here because we're getting close to that hour mark. We don't want to turn into a pumpkin.
Yeah.
So any questions you guys have, throw them, throw them in here into the comments, into the chat window so we can answer them for you guys. But I guess to recap, anyone that's come in now towards the end, as far as the actual unit itself, the R6 is what we're talking about. The camera itself is 20 megapixel IBIS, so it does have in-body image stabilization. It does 12 frames per second or 20 frames per second, depends if you're shooting it electronic or you're shooting it mechanical. Also, it does oversampling 5K, so you're getting 4K. That's going to be amazing at 60p. Also, 1080p you're going to see at up to 120 frames per second for slow motion, which is fantastic. You're going to get Canon log, which is great. So after the fact, if you want to go ahead and do that color grading, you can grade your video after the fact using that Canon log. Also, it has zebras. You're going to have the same awesome dual pixel AF that's going to be in the R5, also in the R6. They are not going to neuter this camera, which is unbelievable. I'm saying this now because the specs are almost solid at this point because release date is, or announcement is July 9th, I believe. So we're pretty much dead on with this. It's not going to be able to shoot RAW like we're going to see RAW video, let's say, like most likely the R5 might be able to do. It does have dual SD cards, and they're both UHS-2 cards. They didn't do something stupid, guys, like they do sometimes where you have one card is UHS-1 and one's UHS-2. What the hell are you doing? This, companies do this kind of stupid stuff just to save $1 or just to show the difference between their high-end model to their middle grade model or something. They didn't do that. It's also going to have supposedly head detection, so eye detection, portrait mode, as well as animal. So we see Sony doing that. A lot of camera manufacturers are doing that now where it can really get in there and know what is an animal's eyeballs and be able to track the animal. So maybe if you're a birder or something or whatever, shooting dogs or whatever, you're going to be able to really, it'll lock right into the animal's face, which is cool. And as far as the EVF, some people originally said that EVF is going to be different from the R5 to the R6 as a way to save money. And according to what we're reading, it's going to be the same, like, I don't know, 5 million pixel, whatever it is, EVF. A really good, the same EVF that's going to be in the R5 is going to be in the R6. The only thing that does change is Bluetooth, I believe, is 4.2 in the R6, whereas with the R5, it will be 5.0, the latest and greatest. And of course, they have to do this. As far as the battery, it's still the LP, the E6, NH, I believe it is. Same exact battery in both of them, so you're not getting like a lower end battery if you get the R6 in comparison to the R5, so that's good. So those are pretty much the specs that we have as of right now. 2,500 for the R6, 4,500 for the R5. Where do you stand? What works for you, so to speak? And I think that a lot of folks are going to be looking at that R6. I think it's going to be a really big seller for Canon. I don't want to say as big as Sony's A7 III was, but it could be. It really could be. Yeah. If these specs stay the way they are and we don't see any neutering of the camera, God knows, Canon is just notorious for it. If we don't see that, it really could be one of the bigger sellers, just like the A7 III was for Sony. So we'll see what ends up happening with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a couple comments in here about waterproof. Waterproofing because you're shooting around water, you're shooting sports or boating or what have you. The R6, I mean, from what they're saying, it's not going to have the same build quality as the R5, which would lead me to believe that it's probably a heavy duty body, probably not a plastic body, but it probably doesn't have the weather sealing that the R5 would. So whenever you're shooting around damp areas, I mean, if you're shooting where you're getting completely soaked, I invest in a housing, I guess, but
yeah.
I don't think any camera is designed out of the box to be 100% waterproof. I just don't think that's possible. It's water resistant, weather resistant.
Right.
So if you're looking for waterproof, then you're probably looking at getting a housing, something that could be submerged at that point, such as for scuba diving or something.
Yeah, Daryl brings up a question about the EVF and how would it work for like astrophotography and nighttime. Supposedly, what I hear now, I don't do that type of photography, but what I hear, the EVFs as of today are doing quite well when it comes to astrophotography. Now, the cameras, on the other hand, sometimes
Right.
don't do so well because they're always trying to figure out how to remove spots. And the reason for this is many times we're seeing that sensors are not, let's say, 100% great. And there's a lot of dead pixels on those sensors. So you might have a hot spot where you have like a little green dot, a little magenta dot, a little dead spot where it's a black spot. So what happens is the AI, the artificial intelligence in the camera itself, is seeing those spots and taking them out automatically. So you don't even know that the sensor is actually faulty, let's say. So those little
Right.
spots sometimes are interpreted by the camera as stars in the distance. And they'll want to remove all those little spots. So
Yep.
some manufacturers, you'll see that astrophotography just doesn't work very well. Now, there's been updates to some of them. I don't want to get into and point any fingers, but you'll know who they are. But that is a major issue. But as far as the EVF, astrophotography shouldn't be that much of an issue. It should do a pretty good job, especially with these new 5 million pixel, whatever they are, these really good EVFs that we're seeing that are coming out here.
Yeah, I mean, there's another couple comments about the EVF lag in burst mode and like
Right.
how it would handle that. Are you going to be lagging? Again, it's hard to say. I mean, that's something I don't think we're going to know until we get hands on and
Yeah.
actually see it, to see how the processor can handle the quick bursts.
Right.
That I have no idea. But like you were saying, Joe, and the EVFs across the board have gotten so much better. So one would think that it would do a decent job, but is it going to black out or lag? Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess, we'll have to see what ends up happening. For me, I would say that they will probably, I would guess, I'm going to guess that even though it's the same EVF in the R5 as we see in the R6, I'm going to guess that there'll probably be less lag in the R5 because chances are the processor in there is going to be, it just has to be more robust.
It's got to be.
If it's going to be doing 8K, there's all bets are off. It has to be a more robust processor. So I'm going to think that lag is going to be less in the R5 compared to the R6. But like you said, we're going to have to see when they get some, hands-on real world, when those, when the NDAs, the non-disclosure agreements are lifted. There's a lot of people that already have these cameras that are testing them. I'm not one of them. I wish I was. Maybe if I had 1 million subscribers, I would have one, or whatever I need to do to be able to get one. But it's just, it's one of those things. We'll see when some of these people come out and those NDAs are lifted, and we can actually see, how they work. But I know Sony has done an amazing job with blackout. There's basically none. Their A9 line, I mean, it's really quick. You can't really tell that you're shooting on an EVF. It's doing a really good job, and I'm going to guess that Canon will have to do the same thing. If not, they're going to get called on the carpet when it comes to it.
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely. I mean, at that point, I'm feeling that it's more of a problem with the hardware and the software. More of a defect in the build as opposed to something that's just the way cameras are. I don't
Right.
think we're there anymore. I mean, initially you would say that you could write off some of these issues that people were having across the board, that are, saying, that it's just the technology. The technology is not there yet. I think the technology is there. Now it's just, how they
Yeah,
handle it.
yeah. Joe Mack says, he would basically, he doesn't mind as much as far as the resolution, but definitely, the high refresh rate is what is important, and that is a major, major issue, I think, for everyone. Flicker is a problem. And in burst mode, you start getting those blackouts and you can't see what the hell you're doing. It's a problem. If you're a sports shooter, and I've done, we had Moroso near me. We used to do a lot of motorsport stuff, racing motorcycles. And when you're motoring, like with a 1D, for example, and coming through the car or the motorcycle, and it's like brrr, doing this thing, when you start getting that blackout and you can't track, it's a problem, a major problem.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of the sports shooters are, they've always said, listen, high refresh rate. I cannot have blackout.
Yeah.
I don't care what you do. Give me a lower resolution, but with a refresh rate that I can't see that it's actually blacking out. And I'm good with that. And that's, there's something to be said about that. So, we'll see. This is going to be a very high-end EVF, according to, all the rumors. So, but once again, processor. If that processor cannot handle, the EVF, then I don't even know what to say. Because if it's going to be doing, if it's going to do 4K at 120 frames per second in the, the R6, and it's going to be doing 8K 30 frames per second in the R5, they should get the EVF, straight, I would imagine. I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so.
So, but I guess that's probably about it. There's a lot of people that are just coming online here. And if you just got here, thank you for coming. We're going to take like maybe 5 more minutes of questions. Anything that you have, any questions for me or Trevor, please just put them in the, comment area so that we can, or the chat area, we can, kind of get to it. Also, if you're watching this instead of live, Memorex. I said that too, and they're like, what the hell is Memorex, right? What the hell is Memorex? So if you're an old person, like me, then live or Memorex would basically be, this is a live broadcast. Memorex would be the tape or watching recording. So if you're watching a recording, obviously you can't ask questions here live for us, but in the comment area, put those questions down there. I answer every single question. We have, what is it, like 20, almost like 28,000, I don't even know what the number is, 28,000 subscribers, whatever the number is now. I try not to keep track of it, but I try to answer every single question, every single comment. So put them down there and I will get to them. Also, Trevor will be able to get in there and answer too if you have any questions for him. Also, I want to say that if you haven't picked up my ebook, a lot of you have been with me for many, just months and months and months. I've been doing this for about a year and a half now, a year and 3-4 months, whatever. And I want to say that, God, I feel blessed because the people that are here, they're like just unbelievable people that have a ton of great information and they are constantly contributing to the channel, and I appreciate it. Also, you've picked up my ebook, most likely if you've been with me for any period of time. If you're new, pick up that ebook. You can find that over at the JCristina.com/ebook. Once again, JCristina.com/ebook. 10 tips at making sharper images. Something good for amateurs as well as professionals. It's free. Go pick it up. I just want to tell you guys that so that if you haven't picked it up, now you can go and do it. Also, if you haven't seen any of the products that I've made, from the focus pyramid to all of the lens cleaners as well as sensor cleaner product, the Aurora camera care product, any of that stuff, also go over to JCristina.com. Since you're watching right now, use promo code YT20 at checkout and you're going to get 20% off everything that's in your shopping cart. It doesn't matter what it is, 20% off everything just using promo code YT20. So those are my shameless plugs. Hopefully there's some more questions that have come in. I'll let you get to them over there, Trevor.
Yeah, no, just comments. We're talking about Betamax now.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I had an old Betamax deck that was given to me. God, I think it was my karate instructor gave it to me back in the 90s. That he had sitting around. He was using it to create videotapes. He was using it as a master source. He was creating VHS tapes off of it and selling them as info products, like his karate stuff. So he was no longer using it, and he gave me this thing. My God, this thing was the size of a suitcase.
Oh yeah.
It was huge. It was probably like a good 30 inches wide and probably weighed 50 pounds. The thing was massive.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can't pronounce his name. It's Vazikos. He writes, and I put it over here in the chat window. He writes, if a global shutter is used, can a company technically replace physical shutter? Blah blah blah. Yes, guys. Yes, I've talked about global shutters in the past. The minute that a global shutter is out there, it's game over. All right, game over. Whoever gets that global shutter at a minimum of 16 to 20 megapixels. Right now, global shutters, you see them at like 4, 5 megapixels. Once you get a global shutter at, let's say, 20 megapixels, game over. That is the winner. Shutter no longer required. It is, now, people are like, what the heck is a global shutter? Well, currently the way the shutter works is it's opening and closing, and you're actually that's where you get that jello effect, right? Whereas the image is coming through and you're scanning the image, you're scanning that sensor from top to bottom, left to right, okay? A global shutter works differently. Instead of scanning the image, all right, you're capturing frame by frame by frame, literally the entire frame in an instance. So there is no jello effect. There's no rolling shutter. Rolling shutter is gone. Shutters will be dead as we know it once global shutters are available. I predicted 5 years, and that was probably about 3 years ago. I'm going to say at least it'll be another year or two. Global shutters are being used for industrial purposes right now on assembly lines, but we're not seeing it in our industry as of yet. But they are working on them, and they're right around the corner. I would say within a year or two, we're going to see it. And that will be the revolution. A global shutter in anyone's camera will be the revolution, the same as the 5D Mark II was when it came to shooting 1080p video, cinematic video, 24,
Right.
Whatever. So that was a major thing. Global shutter will be massive.
Yeah, that'll be huge. Well, I think
So,
we're
all
having
right.
some comments in here, but I'm not seeing really any more questions.
All
So I
right.
would say at this point,
Yeah,
thanks
we
for
will.
joining us. This is great. And leave comments down below the video if you're watching it after the fact, and we'll try and answer them there.
Yeah, also tell them where they can go to find you. Also, if they want to find some of the stuff that you do, you are a web designer, you do web hosting, you do a lot of creative stuff. So let them know where they can go to find you also.
Yeah, sure. So my company website, where we do our website development and hosting services and all that, you can find that at currentmediagroup.net. What would probably be more related to this community would be my other site, currentphotographer.com. We had offered websites through there, website hosting, but in the education center, we've probably got about 1,200 articles in there, all about photography from 2009 forward. So there's lots of great resources there. We see traffic to that site every day. We have a lot of business articles in there too that are fairly evergreen as well. So lots of great info there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, you know where to find my stuff over at JCristina.com. You can find all of my products there. You can also find my products on B&H, photo and video. Love the guys over there. And of course, on Amazon. Don't forget to pick up that ebook over at thejcristina.com/ebook. If you haven't picked it up, once again, go and grab that. So that's it, guys. We are out of here. Many blessings to each and every one of you. Thank you so much, Trevor, for being here. It was absolutely awesome to have you. I love being able to have these conversations and to be able to talk with you guys and answer your questions and have this interaction live. So that's it. We are out of here. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Bye.